Hello and welcome to the Classic Car Weekly podcast, the sibling podcast to the popular weekly title. I'm this week's host, Jesse Billington, the staff writer, and I'm joined by our editor, David Simister.
Good morning.
And by our, new deputy editor, Chris Hope. Welcome to the podcast under your new title.
Thank you very much, guys. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, and obviously we've got an important issue on our hands to discuss, but we'll get to that in due course. We'll kick off as we usually do with an Our Classics catch-up, and Chris, this is particularly prevalent for you because your classic features in this week's issue.
It does?
It does.
Yes,
this is
the Peak District, haven't you?
Oh, of course it is, yeah. Gosh, oh my gosh. Now, if ever you want to sort of have a peek behind the curtain of newspaper production, this is kind of it. Because especially because we're sort of working ahead. I completely forgotten that it was in this issue, sort of thing. So yes, absolutely. And you know what? It's quite fitting. The weather is absolutely atrocious outside, and it mirrors that first day when I was at the Peak District. So yeah, I'm getting flashbacks now. Actually, I've mentioned it before in the podcast. I won't sort of dwell on it too much, but you can read all about it in this week's issue. It was one of those situations whereby friends and I were sort of realizing that the year was flying by. We hadn't really done anything hugely of note. And one of the reasons for that was because, we're just very busy people. Life gets in the way. Most of us have dependents. Most of us have fairly full-on jobs. And it was getting more and more difficult to sort of find a free weekend where one of us wasn't going to be sort of taking the kid to a swimming lesson or had something else that they needed to do. So, we just found a weekend in September. Sat round a beer garden in summer and decided that was the weekend where we would be free to do something. And it worked really well, apart from the fact it was September and the weather very much conspired against us, sort of thing. We had one atrocious day and then one amazing day. So, I think focus on the latter rather than the former.
Yeah, very much a case of the Peak District loves to ping pong between the two sort of weather conditions of abysmal and then absolutely stunning. And there's a lovely sort of spread between the shots of sort of some rather gloomy grey days with headlights on, and then sort of on the second half of the spread there are these lovely sort of sun-drenched shots of sort of Winnets Pass and Speedwell Cavern sort of flying by. And you're like, yeah, that seems about right for the Peak District, in my experience at least.
And the fact it was just hilarious because there was just no evidence the following day of what had happened the day before. By midday everything was dry as a bone. You had no idea that the previous day it was like biblical rain that had taken place and weather warnings and all sorts of things. It's crazy. It's crazy. So.
True mix of conditions. David, on the classic front for you, has there been any updates, or are you still very much a sort of firm fan of the local public transport, really, as you've been on the train?
No. I've been out in the Toyota again this week, so I did a 6-hour round trip it should have been a 4-hour round trip. It was actually 6 because of various accidents on the A50, but I was out in the Toyota going to CCW Towers and back. Main thing is that obviously I've done a bit of work on getting the oil and filter changed and the timing belt done because it's on 131,000 miles now. And the thing that I've been asked by my mechanic friends is should I be looking at getting the automatic gearbox oil changed, because that's a surprisingly cloudy area. A lot of cars, these older automatics, are say, they're sealed for life, these cars, and they're very much the life that they're referring to is 10 years. Mine is now on its 26 year of moving and grooving, so maybe it's overdue a bit of TLC.
Yeah, I think potentially an automatic gearbox service wouldn't go amiss, because the last thing you want is that letting you down all of a sudden and rather marring the Toyota's otherwise relatively impeccable reliability. I have to say,
it's a pretty good record so far. So I think that's a bit of preventative maintenance. I think wouldn't go amiss.
A blown bulb here and that's about it, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only things I've had to do to it so far, I had to do the oil, I had to do a change on one of the oil pipes up at the front a few years because that sprung a leak, and I had to change the ignition barrel. But other than that, it's just been tires. I had the exhaust welded up, but it's still on the original exhaust. It's still going strong. But other than that, it's just wear and tear items really. The tires, brakes, blown bulbs, that sort of thing, trivial stuff really. So, but no, it's just a case of just making sure I'm keeping on top of the servicing and preventative maintenance now.
That's
Nice
why we
work.
never see it in our classics, because you can only sort of spread, a bulb bloom. It's not
Yes.
the work of sort of several hundred words, is it, sort of thing? So
No, Japanese Retmobile is reliable is not the most enticing classic car tale, unfortunately, which is why it makes fleeting appearances in our classics.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I can attest that having a gearbox that suddenly decides to not hold important fluids is a bit of a pain because the Jimny's still out of action, and hopefully again at some point today I will finally phone a workshop to try and get that booked in for an overhaul, really. There is a bit in the back of my mind that's wondering whether I send it down to Barrett Engineering somewhere down on the south coast, who re-engineered Jimny gearboxes to put in midgets and sprites. And he's got a kit which really tightens up the shifts and the detents on them so you can properly bang through the ratios. And yeah, it's an interesting swap because generally speaking, you don't put it behind the A series or the 1500, you put it behind the inline four pulled from a Nissan Micra, the K11 Micra,
yeah.
and it bolts straight up with just a simple adapter plate just to shim out the flywheel. And yeah, it's actually a surprisingly sort of snappy gearbox when you've properly tightened it up and changed a lot of the springs on it. So it's a gearbox that is quite in demand, and there is the thought floating at the back of my mind of I've enjoyed the Jimny a lot. The gearbox is going to cost about £1,000 to repair, but to a midget and sprite enthusiast who's looking for one, they're worth about 1,500 quid and they need going over anyway before they get put in a car. So I'm like,
Oh,
it's sort of at a tricky point where I sort of go, do I love the Jimny for more than its gearbox's value, or do I sort of free up some capital and look at other avenues? So yeah, interesting times. I don't think I'll be putting it straight into my MG because I haven't. Well, for one, I've only just finished building up the Triumph engine, so I want to sort of enjoy and use that for a bit before considering and building up funds to put in the Nissan unit. So we'll see how sort of how much a good workshop wants to charge me, let's say, before I start sort of making those decisions. But
okay.
yeah, I
Do
enjoy
you really, 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 really want your MG to be off the road again for a prolonged period?
This is the other thing. I don't want to start tearing into it without having all the bits there ready to do the swap, because you can do the swap if you're prepared and have all the parts sort of laid out and have the time available, importantly. You can do it in a long weekend, as it is very much the case of the plug
but
and
as
play.
I've just said, it's finding that long weekend that's the issue.
Yeah, and long weekends are something I find quite hard to come by. So we'll see how that goes.
If you're going to do it, then I get it. You're going to do it over winter when you've not got shows and things to go to. But yeah, you'd be amazed how quickly we find ourselves in December and New Year is all I'm going to say to that. So
yeah, so hopefully I'm going to get the Jimny back on the road is actually sort of the more fore plan, and we'll go from there, because the Jimny has done a remarkably low number of miles this year on account of constantly being broken or halfway through repair, with its heater matrix gone, with the rear brakes gone, missing MOTs, and then finally get it working, and then the gearbox decided to go. So I think it's only been actually in use for about 3 months, and none of them consecutive. So we'll see if we can try and get it on the road before the end of the year. That would be nice, especially if the weather continues to be as grim as it is outside my window at the moment, and it's four-wheel drive coming into its four. But anyway, our classics out the way. We'll dive into this week's issue, and it is one of our 88-page bumper issues. There it is, David modelling it very nicely with some brilliant coverage of the NEC's Classic Motor Show inside. And gents, we all spent days at the NEC across the weekend. What did we think to the show overall? What was the sort of the overarching impression?
It had a really buzzy, confident feel. I think that was reflected in the record attendance that they had this year. I thought that the sort of the visitors and the cars that turned out were more diverse than ever before, and it had a really nice kind of celebratory feel. That the kind of that's best of the best theme that they have for the Lancaster Insurance previous winners. I thought were really encapsulated. what was going on, but they had sort of really top line experts. Richard Hand was there on the Friday, sort of talking through his time on Top Gear in the Grand Tour and his restoration tips. Had a really nice feel, and I think as well it's worth acknowledging the tribute. We found the very sad news on the Saturday as well that Quentin Willson passed away. I'm sure we can talk about that a little bit further down the line in this chat, but I thought it was really nice that the show took the time to pay tribute to his career as well.
I think it just shows what a well-oiled machine the NEC is, that it can be agile enough to react to that news and do something about it without fear of being insensitive or without fear of being heavy-handed. I mean, it's probably testament to first of all the main event organizer, Andrea Seed, but the people that she has around her and the rapport she has with the celebrities. I mean, Mike Brewer was just exceptional across the entire weekend, as he always is. But yeah, I think away from that sort of sad news and incredibly unexpected news, it really was a bolt out of the blue. I think a lot of us are still sort of processing it, to be completely fair. I think the theme that was selected for the event, the Best of Both Worlds, really gave a lot of license for clubs to sort of go off in different directions. Some sort of balanced originality and modifications, and then sort of put forward cars that were the extremes and then had happy mediums. Some had the combination of open top and fixed head cars. So talked about how, more all weather versus, sunny summer fun. I was just really impressed by how the clubs were able to take that theme and offer so many different interpretations of it, and bring some incredibly interesting cars with really sort of incredible stories as well.
Yeah, there was some great sort of ranges and ways that clubs and sort of groups had interpreted that sort of best of both worlds answer. And I think two of my favourites when it came to that were the VSCC, who had a brilliant display down in one of the far halls, which showcased sort of the spread of cars that fall under the VSCC's umbrella and the way that people use and enjoy their cars as well, to the point that they had a car that had freshly competed in the Cotswold Trials and was still covered in mud, a sort of little stripped down Austin 7, right the way through to sort of pristine show cars and sort of more extravagant examples of cars from their club. So that was a really nice way of sort of showcasing the sort of easy and dirty right the way through to the more extreme. And then one of the other clubs that really sort of utilised that idea to its foremost was the Wolseley Hornet Special Club, which had everything from the standard sort of saloon car built on the Wolseley Hornet sort of special chassis, all the way through to a racing example, to boat tail and beetleback sort of coupes and drop top roadsters. So it was a unique display in that regard, that it showcased that sort of full range of what the car could achieve.
Yeah, I think the one of the things that really stood out for me as well was the iconic auctioneers live sale as well. That was their biggest sale yet. I think it was 339 cars. I think we counted across the 2 days being sold. They had 12 live auction world records. Again, that was a phenomenal part of the show. And the thing that struck me actually was don't forget, in the midst of a cost of living crisis actually, but the amount of people who were heading into the show and the amount of people who were paying good money for some really significant cars as well shows that actually our hobby is in a really healthy place.
I think we were speaking to some of our markets experts, weren't we, David? And they were likening it to some of the sales that take place in America, sort of thing. The sort of pull from sort of not hundreds of miles but thousands of miles away, sort of thing, and they come for huge sales. And for that particular sale on our more humble shows to be likened to that was sort of gives you an impression of the scale that we're able to achieve. It just felt really busy on the first day of the event, the Friday. I was kind of sort of taken aback like that. I mean, you lose track of time in the NEC anyway. It's like, you know, you sort of go in at darkness and you come back out again at darkness. So it's difficult to sort of keep track of days. But it genuinely felt like a proper busy and bustling Saturday sort of thing, being there on the Friday sort of thing. So yeah, you know, it's a very well established show, and you would expect, if anything, it would be more challenging to sort of, you know, to broaden its appeal in the face of, you know, new events and new ways of attracting audiences sort of thing. But yeah, just completely bucking the trend from my perspective.
It was packed across. Certainly the Friday and Saturday were heaving. Saturday, if anything, seemed like we were in absolute capacity within the NEC. Trying to move around and get places was sort of, I won't say a nightmare, but it was certainly a challenge. We had just had so many people in the halls enjoying the event. Sunday returned to often its more typical point of a bit sort of quieter and a bit more sort of easy to move around in, and sort of a slightly more relaxed atmosphere, which was nice, to be fair. But yeah, it was a busy event, and it was great to see so many people out enjoying sort of seeing classic cars and sort of taking part in the hobby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I mean, are we going to talk about the TVRs now?
Well, I mean, we can dive into the TVRs if you want to. I know that David certainly.
I can see sort of like David is desperate to talk about his car of the show, so we should probably just let him get on with that.
Wow, what a TVR that was. I mean, the start. I will admit, being from Lancashire, that yeah, I'm probably biased, but you know, being born in Blackpool, but yeah, the TVR car club stand was my, you know, absolute highlight of the show. For two cars, particularly the TBR Speed 12, the concept car that was originally shown at Earl's Court in 1997, back for its first time at any car show for 28 years. And Clive Reed is leading an incredible project to get that car actually up and running and back onto the road, which is phenomenal. And the car next to it as well was the Tuscan that was used to launch the model at the NEC in 1998. So again, a really significant part of TBR's history, and I know that the club put a lot of effort into putting that together. And my other favourite of the show was, that I know it's got a lot of attention too, is on the FBHVC stand in Hall 5. The British Motor Museum showed off the MG PR3. This was a development car that eventually morphed into the MGF, and again, it's on our cover as well. A really pretty car, and I would love to have known how it would have got on had they launched that rather than the MGF.
Mm. I mean, you could see the MGF in it, I think. It was one of those where, you know, it very much sort of looked like a prototype. It looked like it still needed finessing in the nicest possible way. But that just added to its eye-catching nature sort of thing. And the FBHVC stand in Hall 5, it was that car was literally, after you get past that initial gate guardian that visitors to the show will be aware of sort of thing. It's the first thing you saw. It was on a huge bit of carpet, you know. Red cars always sort of get the attention anyway, sort of thing. But yeah, I spent some time on the FBHVC stand, and you could see out the corner of your eyes, you're chatting to people, just the route they were taking, and it was always a beeline straight to that car on that stand. So I mean, Hall 5 was for some incredible sort of stuff as well. I mean, the new for this year, the Military Vehicle Trust. I'm not going to pretend to be an aficionado on military vehicles, but it was the spread of machinery that was on there that really sort of impressed me, sort of thing. So I think it just added an extra something, sort of thing, to as I've already mentioned, a well-established show.
Yeah, it was a new sort of depth and a new series of vehicles to actually sort of see and enjoy at the show. And it was a large sort of display as well, but also it was sort of a little bit interactive, obviously sort of larger, chunkier vehicles. It's more sort of engaging for sort of people to get up close to and sort of have a feel of as well, which is sort of something a little bit different. And yeah, it was sort of nice to see the show evolving and changing and bringing in these new elements to sort of keep it feeling fresh, because obviously every year there's different cars on different club stands, but sort of these sort of bigger things that are more noticeable changes are great things to sort of see and enjoy. And obviously, one of the big changes, certainly from our perspective this year, was the fact that Classic Car Weekly had a stand there as well.
Yes.
So it was a great chance to sort of showcase some cars that we sort of obviously had seen across the year, and sort of a chance to also sort of meet and sort of greet readers as well. And obviously the car we had sort of representing Classic Car Weekly was the brilliant 1972 MGB GT owned by Scott Adgehead, who sort of half restored the car, got it back on the roads after pulling it out of a shed, and then at the start of the year had all of his hard work undone, and yeah, was sort of left looking at this sort of flooded out car going, well, all the work starts again. And yeah, he put in the hard miles over the year and was able to sort of bring it along and display it with us. And it was a great chance to chat with him over the weekend. David, I know you've got another talking point. You want to sort of lean more heavily into sort of Quentin Willson as well.
Yeah, I think it is important that we kind of acknowledge and pay tribute to Quentin's long career as well. That was certainly something that was touched on at the show as well, and I know that you know, pretty much the entire classic car community was really saddened to hear of his passing last weekend as well at the age of 68, which no age at all to go, very unexpected. And he had a wonderful ability to kind of put the magic of classic cars, bring that to life, and sort of put it into words that very few others could. And he was also very respected as well as a consumer champion. I remember back on Top Gear in the late 90s as well. He did a lot to sort of promote the idea that you could go over to the continent and buy a brand new car for a lot less than you could in the UK. That was something that the national TV and TV channels and newspapers picked up at the time. And I think my own sort of particular thing that I remember Quentin for as well, he obviously wrote for a lot of newspapers and magazines, including us at Classic Car Weekly in its early years. I think the thing that I probably remember him for most fondly was a series they had in the early 90s called The Car's the Star. And he, for 20 minutes at a time would really bring cars, the magic of these cars to life. I remember sort of, particularly fondly the ones he did on the E-Type and the Mini and the Ford Capri and the Porsche 911. And those shows, even though some of them are more than 30 years old, they still stand up remarkably well today. So if you've never seen that show, I would definitely encourage you to go onto YouTube, punch in the Cars Star and just watch them, because it's Quentin doing what he did best. Absolutely wonderful.
I think he's become part of those car stories. I mean, obviously, E-Type, things like that, these were classic cars that ended production, but he's very much responsible for the classic car hobby in its early years, sort of deciding what is important and what's not, sort of thing. He was at that bigger voice that what he said carried gravitas, sort of thing. And I think in a really sort of strong way, he helped shape the classic car hobby in its formative years. I think he's responsible for an awful lot of that.
Yeah, there are a lot of points where he was sort of important in. Again, I think the crux of the Cars the Star was very much that sort of the case of its title was, it wasn't a case of it was sort of the flashy presenters or anything beyond it. It was a case of making this point of the car's importance sort of in history and their technology and sort of what they meant. And I think beyond that, one of my favorite pieces from his was one celebrating the Rover P5B, and it just sticks into my mind as like a really slickly well produced piece of television that celebrated sort of the importance and uniqueness of an otherwise easy to sort of forget car. It was just sort of Rover's premium saloon at the time, and by the time it came out, Rover was sort of going through a different sort of phase in its production lifestyle, and getting to see the P5B sort of celebrated in this unique way, and sort of the way that he leaned into the history of it, and the fact that at the time Rover was sort of more of an equivalent to Rolls-Royce than we'd sort of seen Jaguar were at the time. Jaguar, I think the line he uses was sort of the car for sort of spivs and cads. And it was this really interesting sort of language and colour he was able to bring to a piece that sort of made him stand out as a presenter and a motoring journalist.
Yeah, and people clung on to, that he had a real authority. He was talking about I remember there was a piece he did on, on Top Gear in the very early 90s, where he talked about the Porsche 928, and he was saying this car is phenomenally undervalued for what it is, and almost overnight Porsche 928 prices jumped by about 2 or 3 grand in some cases, because people, the wider public suddenly thought, oh, hang on a minute, he's absolutely right on these things. So actually, again, he was very because of his background as a second-hand car trader, he was very rooted in the realities of the forecourt, and yeah, that kind of came across a lot in the consumer work he did, and certainly well into his later years, I think he was very much a champion for the motorist as well as being a classic car expert.
Yeah, he was sort of talented across the board when it came to representing the motor car and the motorist as well. So sort of deeply missed. And again, someone who's sort of tied with the early years of Classic Car Weekly as well. I know you've been digging through the archives to sort of find some of his pieces from Classic Car Weekly's earlier days, David.
Yeah, and certainly we will have in next week's issue, we will have a sort of a more fuller tribute to him as well. We've been speaking to some of the people who have worked with him closely over his very long career, again, just to pay tribute, because I know he will be very sadly missed by a lot of enthusiasts.
Yeah, it'll be a nice piece. I've seen it sort of the early stages of that one coming together. Elsewhere in our sort of NEC coverage, we've got some brilliant stories catching up on cars that we've seen at the NEC before, but not at the Classic Motor Show. We've looked at cars that are at the restoration show that have now sort of finished their restorations and made a sort of great return to the scene. We've got a lovely Sebring Sprite that's turned up, an ex-Metropolitan Police Rover P6 as well. This was an ex-Royal Protection car, which has led a very interesting life. A brilliant restored Triumph Herald, which hadn't been on the road since 1973, and a standard van as well, which was part of a very dedicated sort of restoration where only two of the panels on it are new. The rest of it have been sort of dedicatingly reconstructed or used from sort of other sort of saves and salvage standards. So yeah, a really interesting sort of series of stories there. Chris, across the weekend, what was the sort of your favorite story that you stumbled across and were sort of excited to put together for Classic Car Weekly?
It's kind of the antithesis of what you just said, which is that, you had these cars that were at the resto show, some of them being worked on, some of them not, and then we get to the motor show, and these cars are now finished. It makes sort of seeing a barn find style car at the motor show quite odd, but that's exactly what was on the stand of the Crossley Motorsport stand. They had a Aston Martin DB4, and this is a car that the company has acquired to restore, but crucially, it's going to be restored by a group of youngsters. I think the average age of this half a dozen sort of specialists is going to be sort of 22 years old, sort of thing. So the man behind it, Julian Crossley, spoke very enthusiastically about how they wanted something whereby they could have something with a wow factor, where if someone was sort of come across this car, they would expect it to be taken to a very well-known, very well-respected specialist with years upon years upon years of experience. And what they're going to try and do is not cut corners. It's not that they're not going to try and do it in a fast sort of way. They're going to try and sort of emulate that, but they're going to try and sort of distill all of that learning into this young group of enthusiasts. And the timescale that they've set themselves is quite ambitious. They've not committed to a particular date in time, but they are going to be covering this on their social media accounts. They're hoping to have videos on YouTube where people can follow its progress, sort of thing. So they're not going to be in the position to sort of put it on a shelf or put it on a back burner. They're going to have to sort of, once they start, keep the momentum going. So I'm really interested to see how it will follow, because Julian was able to show that the back end of the car, not too bad, but as soon as you get past the B post and start looking at around the engine, sort of a lot of the panel work there has disappeared. It is no longer there. So yeah, they've got a fight on their hands, and I mean, this is the same group who were able to, within the space of a year, acquire a Jowett Jupiter and have it race prep for this year's Le Mans Classic. So I have every confidence that they're going to do it, but it is a very different challenge to that. Yeah, I look forward to seeing how their restoration skills can be demonstrated. So yeah, it should be good.
Yeah, if you saw the Jowett Jupiter, it was on the Jowett Car
Mm.
Club stand as well. If you saw it across the weekend, the sort of the level of finish and the level of sort of professionalism achieved in the work they'd done to that car was exceptional. So I have very high hopes for what happens with this DB4 project. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to follow on their very well kept social media channels as well, YouTube and TikTok. I know they're sort of good presence on there as well as Instagram. So if you're sort of curious as to how this project's going, give them a follow online and sort of keep an eye on the project, because I guarantee you it will go a lot quicker than you're actually anticipating, and the finished result will certainly be one to enjoy. David, what was your favourite story to pick up on across the weekend?
Oh, I think that there's so much to dig into really. I think for me the pride of ownership for all of those cars had a fantastic set of stories behind them, and I know speaking to Dave Wotton as well, the effort that he put into his Vauxhall Astra GSI Turbo, the very last one made, I think it was absolutely phenomenal. It was a really well deserved winner, and I think for me the kind of the story that I came away with actually was that our hobby is changing and adapting in a way to kind of embrace some of these newer cars in a way that I think even sort of 5 or 6 years ago at the same show you wouldn't have seen. So I know there will be more going about that going into CCW over the next few weeks. So keep an eye out for that when it does come around.
I mean,
Yeah,
the Astra pipped to the post a 2009 Ford Escort RS Mark II. So
Yeah.
again, it just sort of shows. And let's remember, these aren't sort of vehicles that, a set selection of judges assigned by event organizers. These are all voted for by the attending visitors, sort of thing. So
Yeah, that's a really important point actually. Yeah,
yeah.
because obviously if the public who turned to the show, ooh, that's not a classic car, they wouldn't have voted for it, would they?
Hmm.
yeah, it's I do quite enjoy the pride of ownership because it does bring together this absolutely sort of brilliant range of cars. I mean, you look at some of the entrants from this year's sort of collection. We had a 1.1 Ford Fiesta from 1983 parked next to sort of a 66 Mustang. We had a Mark One Cortina, this sort of brilliantly sort of modified and sort of restored comma pickup truck as well. It's sort of the range and the spread of the styles of cars and the ages of cars and the uses and owners of cars have sort of got this sort of great range to it, and it really showcases the sort of depth and variety of what sort of is encompassed within the classic car world. So it's really an exciting display to see every year, and obviously we get the sibling version of it as well at the restoration show. So you sort of get two bites of the cherry to sort of have a look at this great display of, I say, wealth in sort of the terms of its diversity and its excitement of the classic car world, and the fact that we've got so much sort of to offer when it comes to this variety. It's brilliantly exciting.
It's become almost sort of the heart of the show in a way. It's of the five sort of halls, it's right slap bang in the middle of the third hall sort of thing, and I think it just brings together almost all the elements of all the halls. It literally, Andrea does a fantastic sort of job twice every year, given that it's at the Resto show as well. But it just sort of has this mix of cars, ranging from sort of the Cortinas to Focuses and different vehicles as well. As you mentioned, it's not just cars. There is a little bit of everything. So yeah, I'm always interested to see what's on that stand, and I always sort of follow closely when we break the list in sort of September, October time, what's going to be there sort of thing. And it's usually one of the first places that I try to get to when I am at the show.
Yeah, there's always plenty to enjoy. Well, outside of our NEC coverage, obviously we've got a lot of the sort of regular content within Classic Car Weekly. We've got a celebration of the achievements of clubs across the year. Obviously, the thing that the Classic Motor Show brings together is car clubs and their celebrations and achievements. And 2025 has been a fantastic year, really, for bringing those together. So we've put together an A to Z of some of the incredible celebrations we've seen across the year, from races that are celebrating milestones to cars, clubs, and models that have also achieved great things and been celebrated by the clubs together. On top of that, we've got all the usual content of the regular news from across the classic car world. Out and About takes a look at the newly released race list for Goodwood members meeting. And on top of that, we've also got news ahead of Club Fest as well, which Car Club Fest, which looks to be a very interesting one, David.
Yeah, and again, we are partners. So it was originally known as the Interclub International Weekend, which we partnered with as Classic Car Weekly. Be back at the Three Counties Showground in Malvern, 14th to the 16th of August next year. And again, we are the media partner, and that looks like it's going to be a really nice. We talked about celebrating car clubs. That again is going to be a really good celebration of everything that car clubs do brilliantly.
Yeah, should be a very good weekend indeed, with plenty to see when it comes to just a great spread of classic cars across sort of a 3-day event. And hopefully the August weather will be kind. Otherwise, it is a busy issue of Classic Car Weekly. There's also a Christmas gift guide, because of course that is on the horizon, so well worth picking up and having a leaf through if you're already struggling for ideas. Otherwise, though, we have still got an issue of Classic Car Weeklies put together for next week's issue. So, gents, thank you very much for your time. I'll let you all bustle back off to the busy days of production, and I'll get editing on this week's podcast, unless you've got anything else to add in.
No, a pleasure to take part as always.
Perfect. In that case, thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back with another edition of the Classic Car Weekly podcast, and of course, another issue of Classic Car Weekly.